You're listening to Catholic Chicago. Ahead, the Archdiocese of Chicago brings you programs about the people, events, and issues that touch our lives. Welcome to Catholic Chicago.
Good morning and welcome to Built on the Rock, a radio show dedicated to helping couples, dating couples, engaged couples, and married couples to build their marriages and their relationships on the rock that is Jesus Christ. I'm Father Bruno Berkmans. I'm here with my co-host, Sandra Labouvi. Hi, Sandy. How are you doing? Good morning.
Good morning, Father Brito. I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. I'm kind of surprised, though, that here we are and it is June. How does the time fly?
I tell you, as you get older, time goes faster. I can tell you that. Yes. I mean, I was just thinking, come July, I would be retired for 2 years now.
Oh, my.
And it's so funny that people ask me all the time now, oh, are you enjoying your retirement? I only say I'm adjusting to my retirement. Yes, I enjoy it in the sense I don't have to get up in the morning for an early mass or something, and nobody is bothering me with some, unhappy emails or criticizing some decision I made, because I don't make any decisions anymore except what to eat, what to cook. So it's a different, but I'm going to several parishes, different communities to do sacraments, which is nice.
Interesting that after 2 years, you would say you're still adjusting to retirement. I have friends who have retired or are approaching retirement, and it seems like it's a big struggle, especially for the men who have identified themselves with their work for so long. And how do you go on into this new phase and still feel useful, still feel like you're contributing, like you're using the gifts God has given you? It seems like it's a big adjustment.
Yeah, I think also part of the growing in grace is to understand it's not what you do is important, what you are as you get older. And that is a transition that you have to deliberately make, which is not easy. Because as you said, especially for us priests, it's all about what we do as priests, whether it's celebrating the sacraments or leading a parish or helping people to grow in their prayer life or their spiritual life. That's what it is. We don't have families to turn to, We have our people, our parish, our community, our church. So and that is why retired priests are always working. They're still helping out here and there. And very few, I think, spend their days golfing. I think very few do that. So anyway, we are back doing this beautiful show again. I hope our listeners are listening. We interviewed the Kaufmans, Larry and Cheryl, a little bit ago. And we would like to unpack, that interview and see what insights they provided for our couples. And one theme that kind of emerged for me is the whole idea of sharing.
Yes.
They seem to be sharing a lot of things. And of course, marriage is supposed to be sharing. Relationship is about sharing. It's not about one person or the other. It's that common bond, in action is sharing. That's what you do.
Right. So, let me just take a moment now, if I can, to reintroduce our listeners to Larry and Cheryl. I always like to give a brief summary of their story before we dive deep into the details, just for a little bit of context. So, as you mentioned, Larry and Cheryl Kaufman, what a charming couple. Goodness, what a charming couple. They've been married for 50 years. You like to call them a golden couple. And it's interesting, when I look at them, the smile on their faces, it almost looks as if they just met yesterday, doesn't it? They seem so enamored with each other still. There's something special to having that ability to look at the other with those same eyes of love that you did in the earliest of days. And it was so evident between Larry and Cheryl. But their story, so what's funny is they grew up in a very small town called Galena, Illinois. Our listeners may be familiar with that town. It's become quite a tourist attraction these days, but back when they grew up there, it wasn't. It was just a very small town where, as Cheryl said, everybody knew everybody. But the interesting thing was that Larry and Cheryl did not know each other. They went to different schools there, and they didn't meet each other until they had relocated to the Chicagoland area. So I believe Cheryl was teaching at Mary's Seat of Wisdom, and Larry was working at Edison Park. And it seemed like one evening they had gone to a bar in Rosemont, which is where they actually met. So they met, they dated for about a year, and then they went back to Galena to get married a year later in 1972. Larry was 29 at the time, Cheryl was 24, and they were both ready, as she said, to make that next step. So Larry was an engineer. He was also working on his MBA, and it was a very busy time for them, but they started their family. And when Cheryl had birthed their first daughter, this was in December of 1973, at that point, Cheryl had stopped working. So then they talked about how Larry got his MBA, and then they started to all these different moves, right? They left Park Ridge, they moved to Minneapolis, back to Aurora, back to Park Ridge, then to Michigan, then back to Park Ridge. And we kind of laughed about how all roads seemed to lead back to Park Ridge. And Cheryl definitely agreed with that. And she said it was important to them to be close to family. So that was one of the first things that that I noticed, was that importance of being close to family. But actually, even prior to that, we talked about how it was just beautiful to witness God's hand at work in bringing them together. You know, if it was left up to us, you'd think, oh, okay, they grew up in this small town. They would have known each other, bumped into each other, surely. You know, you go through these processes, you scope out your mate, you date, whatever. But it didn't happen in the easiest of circumstances for them. It happened when they came to a big city like Chicago. So, you know, it's so apparent to me that God's hand was in that, in joining the two of them together.
I will actually take that as our first insight.
Yes.
The hand of God.
Yes.
The hand of God. You know, how, as you said, they came from a small town, they moved out away from that town, and they meet back here, close to each other, Edison Park, and she was teaching in Park Ridge, and they go to Rosemont to a bar, and there they meet. I mean, and what is more beautiful is God gave them this gift, and they kept working on it. See, God gives you the gift, but you got to wake up and realize that, and then you treat it with that same care and concern, because that gift is precious. You see, they put in the effort, and you will see later on, we'll talk about how they adjusted to each other, compromised with each other.
Right.
See, that is what it is. And here, what I'd like to tell, especially to young couples, you know, or young people who may be listening, I don't know. Sometimes, you know, people have their own schedule. Oh, by this age, I should do this. By this age, I should have a child. Then I am, you know, whatever. No, you just, yes, you do what you got to do, but trust in the Lord. You know, trust that this God wants the best for you. If he's a loving father, he wouldn't want you to be unhappy. But then what happens, sometimes we try to force the hand of destiny, and we want to be with somebody who may not even be good for us. So I think it is important, first of all, to recognize the hand of God. You know, they used one of my favorite expressions. It was not a coincidence, but a God incidence.
Exactly.
You know, in my experience with couples over the years, the couples who met not of their own choosing, but almost an invisible hand of God brought them together. Those are the real stories that I believe in. You know, so I think that is a very important point for our people to realize that. And the other thing what they said, I remember this, they said shared values.
Yes.
You know, that was very important to them. Family was important to them. Their faith was important to them. See, I'm not saying that two people who do not share all those common values cannot be together. I'm not saying that. But when you have those shared values, that binds you together,
Yes.
makes you even stronger.
Yes.
Especially with regard to faith. You know, what I've seen is that when things are smooth and easy, it doesn't cause a problem. But when there are challenges, it is your faith which sustains you, because faith is not skin deep. You know, it shapes the person that you are, the way you look at the world, the way you look at life. And that also shapes the priorities you have, you know?
Yeah, Larry had even acknowledged how they came from very different backgrounds. And so right there, it's not like they were the same people with the same interests and the same hobbies and all of these things. He recognized it was very different, but that commonality of faith is what really was the glue that built their relationship and helped it to sustain the tough times.
Yeah, the other point of the faith is, you know, why do we insist on people getting married in the church? Especially if there are two baptized, a Catholic and a Christian, or two baptized Catholics, it is a sacrament. They're not mere promises you make. It is, you are making a vow. Vow you make to God, and they are sacred, you know, and gives you the extra motivation to persevere. So I hope that our couples will realize the centrality of faith and centrality of values and priorities that we have. And I think before we take a break, I think we could look at another one, shared responsibilities.
Yes. Larry had a lot to say about that, he talked so much about how they both didn't mind helping out, whether it was the cleaning or the cooking or the shopping or whatever it takes in the day-to-day mundane lifestyle of a young family. He said it just makes the work half as much when you're both willing to do that. And what was nice was to see how much Cheryl appreciated that. She used the word exceptional to describe Larry in saying that he not only did he pitch in, but what meant so much to her was that he saw what needed to be done and he did it without even needing to be asked. And how wonderful that is, because yes, there's a lot of things that need to be done on a day-to-day basis, especially when you're married and you have children and you have work and all of these other things going on. And you hate to be in that position of where you feel like the nag, right? Like, could you help do this? Could you do that? So what a blessing, not only that they shared these responsibilities, but that Larry just stepped in to fill the gap and didn't even need to be asked to do that. And that was the case both when they were together and they were both working, but also when Cheryl had stopped working outside of the home to raise the children. She said that Larry was still there to carry his equal part of the load.
I know. So I think we need to, maybe we'll come back to this point after the break. So we have to take a break. Don't touch that dial. This is Built on the Rock.
Have an old bicycle that's not being used? Consider donating it to Catholic Charities Veterans Bike Project of Lake County. Skilled volunteers are refurbishing bicycles to make them safe and ready to be used by veterans to get to and from their new places of work. We also gratefully accept financial contributions that are used to purchase bike helmets and other safety accessories. Our veterans have faithfully served the United States, and now it is our privilege to serve them. For more information on the Veterans Bike Project of Lake County, call 847-782-4219. That's 847-782-4219.
Welcome back to Built on the Rock, a radio show dedicated to helping couples, engaged couples, dating couples, married couples, build their relationships on the rock that is Jesus Christ. I am Sandy LaBouvi, and I'm here with Father Brito Birchmans, and we are unpacking a wonderful interview that we had with Larry and Cheryl Kaufman, who we like to call our golden couple, who have been married for 50 years and seem as in love today as the day they probably met. They certainly have a special something to their marriage. And so we're really unpacking what it is they shared with us about their story so we can try to learn from them. Before the break, we were discussing the points of both shared values and shared responsibilities that came out in the interview we had with Larry and Cheryl. How important it is to have those shared values, even if your lives are very different and your day-to-day is very different. Perhaps your work is very different. What really matters is the foundation that your relationship is built upon. And it's not built upon those things. It is built upon your faith, your love for the Lord. And that was so important to them and is a very active part of their story, which is why I think they have survived 50 years so well. And to the point of shared responsibilities, right before the break, we were just talking about how it didn't seem like they weighed who did what, you're out in the workforce, I'll take care of the home. Those rules, those stereotypes didn't seem to apply in their marriage. There was so much to be done at home, and they both seemed to roll up their sleeves equally and step in to fill the gaps when needed. And I think that caused them to not only have a great appreciation for each other, but to avoid a lot of these little tits and tats that you might get into throughout the days when you're feeling overwhelmed and you just wish maybe your partner would come and just help out. Why do I have to ask? Why doesn't he know to take out the trash, right? How many times do we hear these things? So what a wonderful example that they have. Yeah. Go ahead, Father Brito, go ahead.
No, really, I when I prepare my couples for marriage, one of the first things I tell them, it's actually from the scriptures, marriage is a partnership between two equals.
Yes.
And I try to tell them, you are on the same team. So sharing the duties, the chores around the house, taking care of the children, it is so important. In the scriptures also it says, you should be equally yoked. Yes, yoked not only in your values, but also the burdens that you carry, the duties that you carry out, Otherwise, what happens is that one person ends up doing too much, usually the woman, and feels resentful. So when Cheryl said, oh, he's exceptional, I don't even have to ask him. That's a dream. I don't think many of us men are like that, I would encourage the gentleman to think about that because, it makes it so pleasant for the wife, for the woman, say, oh, he's really, you remember we talked about love languages. Maybe these are the acts of service. This is a special love language. So I really would encourage people to think about that.
And it's just such a small thing you can do that you're really capable of. Who's not capable of lifting a broom or taking out the trash or changing a diaper when you have children? These aren't like incredible tasks that you're doing. They're just the everyday little things, but they can bring so much joy to your spouse, just seeing you being willing to do that and step in and help. So I love it when there are easy things like that we can do. Sometimes we have to do really difficult things to prove our love and our support. These are the easy things. We should be hitting these all the time. So what a wonderful, wonderful example they were.
Yeah, I know. So you see, you do not create your relationship. When you take your spouse on a date or something, it's very easy.
Yeah.
But to do the ordinary, routine moments to show your love for the other.
Yes.
That's what builds up a marriage.
Yes.
Builds up a relationship.
And ordinary moments.
Yes.
They're called ordinary because they happen so often.
Yep.
It's not those extreme circumstances that happen once in a while. These are the everyday little things. And
right.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, let's move on to another point because we always run out of time, don't we, Father Brito?
I
So
know.
One of the other things that I thought was interesting that they had talked about, and Cheryl really had a lot to say here, that she really needed to learn to adjust to Larry. They needed to learn to adjust to each other because they are, as we talked about earlier, not just their different backgrounds, they're just very different people. They're wired differently. Larry was much more the quiet one that Cheryl would describe him as. And Cheryl herself said she's definitely more verbal and more the assertive person. So she needed to learn how to step back and allow Larry to have a chance to speak and to voice what he might be thinking. She would often fill that gap. And so that was a big adjustment. And along the same lines, she said Larry was also very agreeable. And 90% of the time it went her way. But she said there were a few times where Larry would make a decision and she had to learn that when he made a decision, that was it.
That's it.
Just let it be. Let him have that. And not always try to be, what did she say? She too often tried to run the show, as she said. So she really had to do a lot of learning to step back like that.
And so I think there are two things that come out of that. First thing is to know your spouse deeply. What is that is important to them.
Yes.
Right, and what is their personality. See, this is the purpose of dating. When people date, it's not about having a good time going here and there, which is okay. But to find that time with each other, to know, to learn about the other person, so that when you finally make your commitment, you know who you are getting married to. You do not wake up and say, oh my God, this is the person I married. No. So first of all, to know what this person is, what is it important? So she said this, when he makes a decision, that's it. And she knows that she's more verbal. She takes over the conversation. I know that because I've been with Cheryl many times, but both of them adjust to it. They know that. And that whole idea of compromising with each other. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Accepting the other person as they are and just that they accept you as you are, and that makes it work. Yeah. Otherwise, it creates conflict,
Yeah. What you were saying about knowing each other, I just want to add to that it's not as simple as just knowing. It's an effort you have to make. It's an intentional effort of vulnerability and opening yourself to the other person. That's the only way you can really get to know that person. So there's a lot involved with that. But yes, there has to be a bubble, an environment, whatever you want to call it, of safety, where you can truly expose yourself, warts and all, to this person so that they can come to know you. And then as they grow to know you, you can make those adjustments that Cheryl said she knew she needed to make with Larry. It doesn't happen just by virtue of being with the person. It happens by virtue of intentionally growing to reveal yourselves to the other and to learn to know each other and then respect those
I know. Trying to be vulnerable like that is scary sometimes.
Oh, sure.
Because you wonder whether the other person will receive it and treasure it and, cherish it, But that is also a sign for you. When you share and when you make yourself vulnerable, how does that person respond to that? Right. That is also very important to know. That gives you a lot of cues about how this relationship is. So I thought that was a very important point, that they adjusted to each other. Because none of us is perfect. You remember I've told that joke about the couple coming back from their honeymoon, and as the plane is about to touch down at O'Hare, the new husband looks at his new wife and he says, honey, now that we have spent 12 days together, I've been watching you very closely. I can tell you got quite a few defects. In fact, I can describe them to you in great detail. At that point, the new bride smiles and she says, honey, I want to remind you, it is because of those defects I could not find a better husband.
Oh,
you see, none of us is perfect.
True.
But we adjust, we accept, and we move together.
Yes.
Anyway, we got, I think, only about a couple of minutes. So let's move to the next point. And we asked them to give some advice to parents because, they have raised a wonderful family. So
we did. And it was at this point that Larry went back again. I found that interesting. He went back again to talk about the importance of carrying the workload together, adjusting to each other so that one isn't necessarily carrying too much responsibility over the other. That came up a couple of times throughout the interview with Larry. So it shows you just how important that was to him to make sure that he gave his equal part when it came to contributing to the everyday details that needed to be tended to. He also pointed out how nowadays most families have 2 jobs, and so the time to actually do that and do the jobs that need to get done is even more limited. So you're going to feel more of a constraint there, which again highlights the importance of making sure you can jump in and help out and share those responsibilities equally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think they gave, I think it was Cheryl who said, family is like a car with 4 wheels.
Yes.
And I kind of made an acronym with what they said. FARM, F-A-R-M, F for faith, A for academics, what I meant, what probably the everyday things, R for rest, and M for meals.
Yes. Yes.
You know? So they said faith, and they talked about how once upon a time families went to church together.
Yes.
And I know that the COVID did a number on everybody, but we have to get back to that habit. Make it the central point of the week for the family. Once upon a time, people would dress up, go together as a family and celebrate the Eucharist, receive Jesus.
Yes.
That gives you the strength for the rest of the week. We want to encourage our listeners to make it a priority.
Yes.
And then she talked about academics, I suppose the regular thing. But anyway, the rest I thought was family time, being together. And of course, the meals. Again, how many families still have that ritual of the evening meal? We sit together. I mean, I'll never forget, of course, I grew up in India. We always sat together for meal. And that is where you shared your stories and, your parents shared their wisdom. I think the family is formed around the dinner table.
Very true. Father Brito, I see that we are about out of time.
Yes. Yes, I think we are running out of time. We always run out of time.
We always do. So I'd like to close with a prayer, as we typically
Absolutely.
do, and acknowledge that as parents, we often may feel overwhelmed by life. So many things seem to clamor for our attention, right? So here's a prayer for every couple, for every parent. When we are weary, let us turn to the Lord, because after all, he said, "Come to me, all you who are tired, and I will refresh you." So let us turn to him now in this prayer for strength. Lord, I'm weary. My energy is sagging and my motivation is lagging, and I am so in need of you. I need your strength and your fresh touch to get back on track again. Your word says the joy of the Lord is my strength. If that's true, then I need your joy to replace all the bone-tired parts of my mind, body, and soul. The pressures of life sometimes push me into a corner, rendering me helpless to move forward. 100 voices call my name, and I feel paralyzed at times to answer, not knowing where to turn. Lord, help me not to quit, to keep running the race faithfully, and to find strength in that safe, secret place of yours under the shadow of the Almighty. I need your strength to say no when I'm tempted to surrender to harmful things, or when selfishness clings to my clothes and won't let go. I need your strength to say yes when cowardice and fear nudge me to deny the convictions of my heart. I need your strength to reach out in love to those both close to me and all around me. When don't I need your strength, God? You are my rock, and I run to you today, believing that you will lift up my heavy arms, that you will fuel me for the tasks you've given me, and that your joy will completely consume the weaknesses of my life and make me strong again. I don't want to stay grounded, crippled by limitations and failed attempts. I'm tired of feeble efforts. Lord, I want to mount up with wings like an eagle and not just fly. I want to soar. Renew my strength, Lord. Fill me with your supernatural power to overcome each obstacle in my path. With my eyes on you, Lord, with you walking beside me, working through me, I can make it. Thank you, Lord. Amen.
Amen.
What a beautiful prayer.
Yes, it's a beautiful prayer. We all need that strength from the Lord. So have a wonderful beginning of summer, and we will see you again in a month. God bless you, all of you.
God bless. Bye-bye.
Bye.